In this video, we're going to continue down our path of transformations. We're going to look at the rotation property and the rotation animation. What you see before you is a red rectangle centered in the parent, and it's just simply spinning around. That's the rotation animation. This is actually a pretty cool animation, and it's actually pretty complex compared to other frameworks and other things, other technologies that are out there. QML makes it very easy to work with. Let's take a look and see what it takes to do this, and let's look at some common pitfalls. We're going to jump in here. We're going to say rectangle, and we're going to put an ID in here. Let's call this my shape. Right off the bat, notice the spelling. Case sensitive, as always, but we have my and then an uppercase S. That's going to come back to bite us later on in the video. So we're going to say color, and we're going to say red, width, let's say 200, height 200. And let's go ahead and drop an anchor. We're going to center in the parent. Now we need to add a few other children. We need to add a text, a rotation animation, and a mouse area. So let's add a text. Let's call this title. And we want to actually round here. So we're going to say math.round. And we want the parent rotation. In case you're wondering, you do this because you'll end up with a number like that. Actually, that's not even a number, but you know what I mean. You'll end up with something like this. So we want to round it down to like 12. We don't want some massive number being displayed. And then let's make this look beautiful here. We're going to drop an anchor. We're going to center in parent. And we're going to say font bold, true, font. And let's make this a little larger. We're going to say point size 65. Let's say color, say dark red. Save this, let's see what this looks like. Looks beautiful, let's make it spin around. So let's go in here. Gonna try and get some screen real estate here. There we go. We'll say rotation, animation. Notice there's an animation and animator. Two different things. We want rotation animation. And let's give it an ID. Let's call it animation. And this is where things get a little bit interesting. First things first, we need a target. So I'm going to say my shape. And we want loops, something we've really taken for granted here. Everything in so far has pretty much just done one loop. Or actually 0 loops, but we could say like 13 or 800 or 1800 or whatever we want. We want this to loop infinitely, and this is one thing I love about QML. It's very, very self-explanatory. So we're going to say animation infinite, meaning it's just going to loop infinitely. And now we need a from, and we're going to say my shape. And we want to go from the current rotation to 360. And word of caution here, what some people will do is they want to spin it the other direction, so they'll do a negative number. Bad, don't do that. Why? Because you will actually spin it the other direction, but it'll spin faster than you expect, or it'll actually, what's going on is it spins multiple times trying to get to that number. So don't do that, that's bad. Now, how do you actually set the direction? Well, there's a direction property. It makes it very, very convenient. So we're going to say rotation animation, and we want to do clockwise. And if we wanted to spin the other way, we would do counterclockwise. So it's pretty easy to understand. Makes it very, very easy to just look at the code and figure out what's going on. Something I absolutely love about QML. And of course, an animation is just a change over time, so we need some sort of time. We're going to say 3 seconds, and we're going to say running equal true. Remember I said from the last video, be careful about using the running property. Why? Because when this entire scene runs, it's going to see this and go, oh, this is running, and it's just going to fire it off without even asking you. Save and run. Notice how it is animating. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've seen me making a lot of spelling mistakes, and I'm kind of like not really great at the keyboard today. So One little caveat here. You notice how this is spinning around. I did say the spelling of this may come back and haunt us. Let's take a look and see what happens if we make just a minor little misspelling. The ID is case sensitive, so this doesn't actually exist. Save and run, see what happens. It actually animates, and it goes, and then it stops. And you're sitting here scratching your head going, no, wait a minute, the animation started. I literally just saw it. Why did it stop? Well, you guessed it. It's because we have that misspelling. That's why a lot of people will avoid using the ID and just say something like parent. Now, you may be asking yourself, which is the correct way? Well, you see, parent just stopped. Uh-oh, we've got a boo-boo. Why? Because of the target. So if you're going to use one, you have to use them all. So if we change this, now let's try it. Notice how, oh, now it's not working. Oh, that is frustrating. That's one of the little gotchas that you have to really be cognizant of and just understand what's happening here. Now if we save and run, let's see, this should run beautifully. There we go. So be kind of careful. You'll notice some people will use parent and then they wonder why their animations don't fire off. It's one of the little issues in QML. Or they mistype the name of their ID and then they wonder why it runs once and then it stops, or they get some crazy behavior. All right, last but not least, let's add a mouse area. Let's call this area. Don't really need an ID for this because we're not going to access it, but just in case, we're going to say anchors. We want to fill the parent. And then on clicked. And let's say if animation, and I'm just going to copy this rather than try and play around the keyboard. If animation dot paused, notice there's pause and paused. Pause will actually pause it, and paused just returns a bool. And we're going to say we're going to actually resume it. And if it's not paused, we're going to pause it. That's another little issue I see folks making mistakes on, is there's a big difference between pause and paused. Paused returns whether or not it is paused, and pause, the function, will actually pause it. Save and run. And this thing should just work beautifully. We can pause it by clicking it, click it again to resume. Very, very cool. One last thing I want to demonstrate is we talked about this round function here. If we were to just say parent.rotation, you'll see something like this. Really large, unreadable number. That's why we need that round function in there.